Good evening, everybody. This is Marty from Dawgs blog. Tonight's podcast on December 7th, 2018. Continuing saga of Edward Quintanar getting beat up on. It's a vicious attack by the district attorney's office. They have appears they've gone all out on this, as Eddie Quintanar has a lawsuit against the district attorney's office, has a lawsuit against Marlissa Ferreira personally, and has a lawsuit against Kurt Bunch, and he's got a hearing in February to get his job back, and there's a gentleman in the back of the courtroom from the Civil Service Commission or the State Personnel Board, whatever he's from. He's an attorney taking notes on the testimony. Marlissa Ferreira is twisting quite a few things around, and Eddie Quintanar is pretty much getting hammered, and she's still on direct since Tuesday on Edward Quintanar. You heard the noon report, pretty much the same stuff. She keeps saying she's almost done, Marlissa Ferreira does, and then she goes into different areas and keeps going on and on and on. She's like an Energizer bunny, and it has no mercy. Judge was on the bench at 1:36 this afternoon. They had arguments to do. She had the jury coming back at 1:45 after lunch. I don't know why she kids herself like that. And Jai Gohel made an argument to the court, and I 100% agree with him. In fact, we talked about it a little bit at lunch, that Judge Iniga said it's illegal to carry a concealed weapon. Well, no, it's not. You can't carry it in public. Carry a concealed weapon in public without a concealed weapons permit. You can carry one in your business. You can carry one in your home. You have every right to do that, and it's legal. As long as it's a legal weapon and you have a legal right to carry a weapon. Judge Iniga said it's not, agreed that it's not allowed, and that she did eventually reverse herself somewhat on that. Marlissa Ferreira tried to say that it was an argument about in the car, but that's not where the impression that she was leaving with the jury. So Judge Iniga, after Jai Gohel argued that, Judge Iniga told Marlissa Ferreira to clarify the CCW issue, and talk about it was illegal in a car, not illegal on your person under certain circumstances. So the judge told her that she needed to clarify that. So they go on to another issue. That's when the jury comes up. And she goes to another issue on 3/24/15 interview with Quintanar. That was Bunch and John Evers doing the interview. And Evers asked Quintanar about Scott McFarland living next door, and some to the effect what Daljeet said they're all thieves, and then when the conversation happened, but it was before the alleged homicide. He said he believes so. He doesn't really know. He doesn't recall a lot of these things, these dates and things, that these things may or may not have occurred. Judge Iniga said she thought Daljeet Atwal said he didn't like thieves and tweakers, and it came out through Quintanar, and actually what it was that there was a conversation, and they were talking about Scott McFarland and some of the things that he had been experiencing with those people next to him. Corey Coffin had lived next door to Scott McFarland. And Marlissa Ferreira was trying to clarify to her that Q said that D didn't like thieves and such. Q said that Daljeet Atwal had no respect with druggies and such. Marlissa Ferreira wants to confront Quintanar how he knew that. Also requesting to play the July 15, 2012 wiretap between Quintanar and Daljeet Atwal. Attorney Hahn says that Marlissa Pereira was trying to get out. It was trying to get an opinion that was expressed by Quintanar out, and not an actual statement that was heard or said of the tweakers. Then going into the McFarland and Daljeet out at statements, and she's trying to apply that to Quintanar opinion that that's what they said. He said that's not the case. McFarland only told Quintanar that the neighbors were thieves and were bad people, and he was concerned about the people living next to him. And Hahn said it's not a proper questioning of Quintanar on these issues. Jai Gohil argued there's plenty of evidence about the feelings of the tweakers and by a lot of people and the problems that the tweakers that they cause. And Marlissa Ferrer even tried to make it nefarious that Quintanar called them tweakers. And the judge in this case has many times said it's a common name, it's a common term for the drug culture. It's a common term. Everybody knows what a tweaker is. But she says, Jai Gohil says the term tweakers, and there's a lot of information about the feelings of tweakers, and it's accumulative. He says it just goes on and on and on. He says, he's saying, when is this going to end? It's the same old information being asked different ways over and over and over again. Percy Martinez was reading the page of the transcript that Quintanar said was just Scott McFarlane had said, but did not recall what Daljeet Atwal said. So Quintanar said is something that he heard from McFarlane in a conversation probably at Pop and Cork, but he didn't know what Daljeet Atwal had said. It's not clear, Percy Martinez argues, it's not clear who he had talked to. Marlissa Ferreira says it is specific, citing pages where Daljeet said they are all thieves, said it about Corey Kaufman is a thief and a neighbor of McFarland. They wanted them out of the neighborhood. Marlissa Ferreira saying that Daljeet Atwal is the one saying it. McFarland, Wells, Daljeet, and Quintanar were there at the Pop and Cork talking about this. John Evers is the one that asked Corey Kaufman's name to be used and brought him up initially in the conversation in the interview. Quintanar said, a neighbor kid. John Evers said, right, Corey Kaufman. So Quintanar wasn't real sure about this, but had heard of Corey Kaufman. I mean, everybody had probably at that point, because that was after the body had already been recovered. Judge Iniga said it is Quintanar's opinion that Daljeet didn't have respect for the tweakers. That's what she said. She listened to it and read the transcript, and she said she's not allowing Quintanar's opinion in front of the jury. She says it's not proper. Wants to clarify outside the presence and figure out exactly what was being said. Again, Marlissa repeated about the March 24, 2015 interview where Quintanar said it was they were all thieves that lived next to Scott McFarlane. Eddie Quintanar was brought in. The jury wasn't called up yet. She wanted to ask him a couple questions, refreshed him with transcript. And there was a comment, they were trying to catch thieves. He wasn't sure exactly about that. Quintanar said Daljeet didn't have respect for the tweakers and the drug culture, and he said that's true. He felt that was true. They didn't liked the drug users and the thieves, the issues that go along with drug use and the thefts, and they were having ongoing problems at the store with those type of people. And she asked him, how did he know that Daljeet didn't like tweakers? He said, from the incidents at the store. He said he had ongoing problems with people from the drug culture and tweakers and such that were trying to rip off the store constantly. He did not recall Dee saying he didn't like thieves. Just what he heard. He said he was referring that to the incidents that occurred at the store. He said at one time that Dee had said at one time that they didn't like the people that were coming in trying to steal all the time. The ones that come in and try to steal all the time are also not necessarily thieves or tweakers, because there's a lot of beer runs that go on in a place like that, and kids and stuff. He did not recall why Daljeet didn't like the drug people. Attorney Hans argued was questioning him actually. In the interview, Daljeet said all thieves. And there was a September 2nd, I believe it was 2016 interview with Sergeant Dombey and the other Huxell or whatever his name was with the CHP. And Quintanar said in that interview, and this was, probably over a year later of the Kurt Bunch John Evers interview, that he saw that he misspoke about the Daljeet Atwal statements. So he was telling the CHP investigators that he misspoke in that statement. Apparently, they were asking him about some of the same things. Alonzo Bradford, Quintanar's attorney, who was in court the whole time that he's been testifying, asked to address the court, and some of the things are being said by Marlissa Ferreira. He wasn't too happy, and he wanted to address the court, and Judge Zuniga said, no, you're here as a courtesy or something to that effect. Maybe not those words, but something to that effect. So Quintanar is on the stand, and his attorney is not even allowed to address the court, apparently. I'm not too sure about that one, but I guess it could happen. It did happen today. Attorney Hans argued that on 3-2 of 15, John Evers and Kurt Bunch had questioned some of the statements that were made. One of them was, I guess Dee thought they were all thieves, meaning the druggies, the tweakers, and such were all thieves. But he said it belonged to Scott McFarland. That statement belonged to McFarland and not Daljeet Atwal. Hahn said also it's an indication that he did not recall anything that Daljeet said. Quintanar is having recall problems. This was 6 years ago, and he's getting refreshed with transcripts, and some of his answers are being read directly off the transcript. He doesn't have an independent memory of some of these things. Quintanar did not recall making a statement of trying to catch the thieves. He listened to the recording. He said if he listened to the recording, he said it would help him recall. This is the argument that Hans is making. The transcripts have some inaudible comments in it, so they couldn't make out what was being said in the conversations between the two. So Quintanar, he was set outside to listen to it being played later on. Marlissa Ferrer wants the wiretap to be played, and talking about Bobby Atwal and 5-0, meaning Robert Woody, going to Carson's office. I don't know how that plays into it, but she said they talked about Bobby and 5-0 talking about going to Carson's office. This is in July 15th, 2012, wiretap. Quintanar said, after listening to the recording, said he couldn't understand what he was saying. This is after he read the transcript. He says it doesn't make sense to him. He doesn't understand it. And he didn't understand the recording either, because they were kind of talking on top of each other. Dee was excited. He speaks really broken English. So he did have a problem talking to him, and Dee was a little excited that day too. Judge Inigo was asking what specific area Marlissa Ferreira was referring to, and she said, Quintanar is not answering the questions and does not get it. Judge Zuniga was giving Marlissa Ferreira that look when she's not happy what's going on the left side of the room. And the court reporter started looking up real time for exactly that area where the way the question was asked earlier was before lunch, and the way the question was asked and how she asked it, because Marlissa Ferreira has a tendency to change her arguments as she goes along too. Z was reading the transcript, and there was quite a few questions I think she was reading there. Hans argued it's not appropriate to impeach with a recording, only for recollection. Not sure what Quintanar heard on the phone. It's not clear to what was said, what was going on. It was not clear, obviously, to Quintanar. There's no foundation for impeachment on this. So Marlissa Ferreira has spent 4 days trying to impeach Quintanar almost right from the start. And like I said before, and Jai Gohal made this argument today, this is a deposition for future civil litigation, including Quintanar to get his job back, not a direct examination. Judge Iniga said it is a problem when Quintanar doesn't understand, and he said it was choppy. And she asked him, what does he mean by choppy? He says, well, I just don't understand it. There's words that are kind of thrown together. It doesn't make sense. There's not a sentence there. It's just kind of a bunch of words, because Daljit Atwal was a little upset and a little worked up, because that's the day they did the search warrant on the business and on his house. He was taken down at gunpoint and all kinds of things. But she did say that it looks like Marlissa Ferreira wants to play it to impeach Quintanar. She said Daljit Atwal is difficult at times to understand. She's heard quite a few audios and stuff, videos and audios of Daljit Atwal. She says the jurors are probably not going to understand either. And even the transcript says inaudible on several of the areas of that area that she's talking about. Judge Iniga says it's not impeachment if he simply did not understand what Daljit was saying. So it does not mean that Quintanar is being untruthful. So she's not really going to allow some of this to happen. Marlissa Ferreira says you can test the credibility by listening to the tape. Again, the judge says not going to happen. Judge Iniga had that funny look on her face, and she had that struggling for an answer look. She looked at Marlissa Ferreira and says she needs to take a step back. And she paused, took a long pause, and then decided she's not going to say what she was going to say. And I thought that was interesting. She wanted to say something that she knew would get out, and she wasn't happy, and so she decided not to say what was on her mind. In fact, she said she can't say it. She tells Marlissa Ferrer to not create another evidentiary issue. She said it looked like she herself had misunderstood the statement from Daljeet Atwal, and it was Quintanar's opinion, and it's up to the jury to decide what the truth and credibility of Quintanar and anybody else is. She says it's not accumulative. She's not denying it for that, but it is probative. It is probative, but she's not going to allow it. So, there was another issue that Hans reminded her that she forgot to decide the comment that they were trying to catch a tweaker. Again, there's some question about that. Marlissa Ferrer said that did come up in the audio. There's a conversation at the Popcorn Court, according to Marlissa Ferrer, between several people that's saying they're trying to catch a tweaker. Quintanar came back in around 2:35. Here we are an hour later. Jury's still not up. And he's listening to the recording. And he's talking about McFarland and these people living next door to McFarland. Marlissa Ferrer asked Eddie Quintanar, again, remember there's no jury. She's trying to convince the judge what she wants here. And he said he remembers telling investigators about the tweakers and the comments in regards to Corey Kaufman, and the neighbors are thieves. That's about all that he could remember off the top of his head. Hans also asked him, you made a statement that you can't hear what was said. He did not recall what he meant with that statement that he is not sure of. It's unclear on the audio, so he was not sure what it was, and it said, like I said, it said inaudible on the transcripts and stuff too, on the transcriptions too. Judge Iniga said it's not clear what Quintanar was saying or what he was talking about. She's not going to allow her to go into that area. This whole thing is getting accumulative anyway. She said she only has, again, Marlissa Ferrer said she only had a few more questions in that area, and she just wanted to get through it. She's almost done, but that's not what happens, as it usually doesn't. The jury came up at 3:13 p.m. So we had the jury in the courtroom an hour and 45 minutes later, and Marlissa Ferrer was questioning Quintanar again on the 7:15 of 2012 phone call, where Quintanar said it was choppy, and what in the conversation what Daljeet Atwal was saying. He said it was hard to understand is what he meant by choppy. Said he did not understand the way he was talking and some of the things he was saying. He said it was unusual the way he was talking, he didn't really get it. He said he could hear him clearly, because somebody said, well, maybe he couldn't hear, maybe he was in a car, something like that. No, he said he could hear him clearly. He just didn't know what he was saying. And then they started talking again about the interview with Kurt Bunch and John Evers on March 24, 2015. The conversation was about some Scott McFarland's neighbors. Again, they were all thieves. and they said they were going to catch a tweaker, again referring to Scott McFarland's neighbors. And one was, in fact, Corey Kaufman. And she asked him if he knew that it was Corey Kaufman that lived or anything about him prior to, in any conversations, and prior to being Kurt Bunch telling him it was Corey Kaufman. And in Eddie Quintanar, he was kind of familiar with it, but not really familiar with it. He had kind of moved away from the pop and cork. In fact, at one point by the CHP had ordered him to stay away from pop and cork. And he knew there was problems, so he kind of backed off a little bit. He said that apparently there was Scott McFarland was pissed off about the situation. The investigators came on 5/17 of 2014, came to his home. That was Kurt Bunch and I believe John Evers, and told them he was unavailable because he was having dinner at the time, and he said he couldn't talk to them right there. She asked him if the investigators were pleasant and respectful, he said, and professional, and he said yes, they were. Q called him back. Quintanar called him back a little bit later that night. He made an appointment at the CHP for them to meet him at the CHP office. That's when he was working in the Modesto office. But he was on vacation, and he couldn't remember how long his vacation was at the time. So they had to wait until he was back from vacation. Quintanar did feel disrespected because they came to his house. Quintanar had to notify CHP command that they did come to his house. And in Quintanar's prelim, Sergeant Dombey, now Lieutenant Dombey, had testified that they're supposed to notify CHP command if these type of things happen, and that's exactly what Quintanar did. And he was getting some advice from some of those people to not talk to him, like the union rep. Kurt Bunch came to see him at his house. They tried to explain the difference between an internal affairs investigation and a criminal investigation. Internal affairs investigations, you have some rights. They're saying when you're involved in a criminal investigation, they're trying to tell them that they don't have any rights, and I don't believe that for a minute. Police officers do have some responsibilities, but they still have their rights under the Constitution, just like the rest of us. He was looking at the transcript again of the interview to refresh himself. He was on vacation until June 16th of 2014. So it was like a month vacation that he had. He did not call the investigators back until after the vacation. This was after that they came to his house that one night. He did call them back that night. He did not recall if there was several phone calls from Kurt Bunch. And from June 16th of 2014 to March 8th of 2015, he never made a call to Kurt Bunch to talk. On 5/8 of 16, he was working at the Modesto office, and a sergeant had told him that the investigators were there to talk. He didn't really recall that, but he didn't actually talk to the sergeant. It didn't sound like. They had a recording from a dispatcher that told him that the investigators were there to talk to him, and actually it wasn't a sergeant. It was an OIC, an officer in charge. But again, they repeated he was ordered not to talk to investigators by command. The brass at the CHP in his office, and whoever he was talking to, he says they told him not to talk. When he talked to the dispatcher, they played the tape, the audio of the dispatcher. It was a real brief conversation. Dispatcher says the investigators are here. Quintanar told him, who they were, what they were doing. The dispatcher says, well, just go kick their ass or something. And Quintanar joked around a little bit about it. But he just got in his car and left. And, of course, that pissed Kurt Bunch off. He said that he was joking and he had never intended to do any harm or put up a battle or anything with Kurt Bunch or any other investigator. This did leave up to a sidebar, and the DA wants to play an audio of Q talking to the dispatcher. I just told you about that. Marlissa Ferrer went on after the audio was played. It was clear to him that they wanted to talk, and he said again that he had orders not to talk. Told investigators he would not, that he would meet, but he never called them. On March 8th at the office, they were there to talk to him. He did not recall driving away from the back side of the building with the investigators waiting to talk on the other side of the building or inside the building or something. She asked him if he was laughing at the investigators, and that he was not going to talk, and he said, yeah, I was laughing at him. He did think it was funny, what was going on. He was asked if he told Dombey and Hutzel, or whatever his name is. I apologize for getting your name wrong. He did not recall telling them that he wasn't going to talk to the investigators. And that interview was like a year later or something. Marlissa Ferreira said, remember when she said that she was almost done, and this is the last line of questioning she had on the July 15th, 2012 interview. Well, then she promptly goes back to the July 12th, 2012 interview. The wiretap. That he was just talking to Daljeet and trying to find out what was happening. He wasn't doing an investigation. He said he was just trying to figure out what's going on because he didn't understand. In May of 2014, they came by his house. They wanted to talk. And he said he just wanted to disassociate with the whole thing. And he did, after he was advised by CHP, he did sever all contacts and any other inquiries he was making of Daljeet Atwal. He severed all contacts with the Outlaws. He talked to Lieutenant Frost, and she asked him if he was ordered to talk. He said he didn't recall whether he was ordered to talk. Again, she asked him if it was explained that the internal affairs investigation and criminal investigation are separate, and there's different responsibilities or rights that they have in those things. Marlissa Ferrer again started to remind him of the Code of Honor in regards to the CHP Code of Honor. There was objections. There was a sidebar. Here we go. The jury's out at 3:55. So what we had this afternoon, the jury didn't get a lot of time this morning too. We keep getting into these issues. So the jury came up this afternoon. What did I say? 3:13. And then 3:55, they were sent out. So, again, not much time was spent in the courtroom with the jury, and I'm sorry. It just seems like this is the plan all along. And Quintanar again is saying that he didn't recall the call from Lieutenant Frost. Quintanar was then sent out of the courtroom. And she asked Marlissa Ferrer what area that she wants to go into. Marlissa Ferrer said there's a 100-page interview with Dombey and Hutzel, and she wants Quintanar to review that interview to some of the statements that he made. So what he's going to do is review that interview, 100 pages, over the weekend, and he'll be back Tuesday morning. Quintanar actually was given to Alonzo Bradford, Quintanar's attorney, and he went out and gave the transcript to Quintanar. Marlissa Ferrer went on and says, during the wiretaps, Q has a conversation with another gentleman by the name of Frost, but it's not Lieutenant Frost we just talked about. He was a union rep. His last name was Frost also. He was told that he didn't have to talk to anybody by his union rep. Again, Alonzo Granford tried to object and address the court, and Judge Aniga shut him down, says he is not allowed to talk. Judge Aniga told Marlissa Ferrer that she's not going to allow her to use talk, because she's saying that there was threats, that Quintanar made a threat or something, and I haven't heard it in any of the wiretaps I heard. Remember, I sat through Quintanar's prelim, and about using an assault rifle or a veiled threat, to Kurt Bunch or anybody else. She's not going to allow her, because you just use that term assault rifle, and it kind of gives people the cringies, and it's prejudicial, and she's not going to let him do it. He threatened to hurt Kurt Bunch when he was talking to his union rep. He made a joke, and that's what Quintanar does. And Judge noted this too, that he has a strange way of saying things sometimes, and she didn't really appreciate it. And Judge Zuniga is kind of a prude in some ways. She didn't appreciate some of the things the way he talked. Marlissa Ferrer says, well, it shows state of mind and true colors of Quintanar, and that's why true colors, and this guy was a law enforcement officer, and this is why she wants to bring this information up. Percy Martinez offered it's very inflammatory, and this is if this threat actually happened, there was no follow-up. There's nothing that was done about it. There was apparently another person threatened, but it never happened. Or the DA is saying another person threatened or something. I didn't quite get what they were saying. He said, but nothing ever happened. Nothing came out of it. It was just talk. It was just a couple of guys venting. Hahn said he just heard that Quintanar was joking with the dispatcher, and there was never any gun that was ever veiled, presented, pointed at Kurt Bunch's face, Kurt Bunch's face, or anything else. It's just a couple people talking. Marlissa Ferrer says there's nothing more relevant than Quintanar saying he was I can't read my writing again. Saying he was not going to talk. He was very clear about it. He wasn't going to talk because that's the advice he said that he received. And that's what I've heard in the preliminary hearing too. Is a lot of this union rep was telling him, "Don't talk, don't talk." The Lieutenant Frost that he talked to, I heard that recording, and I don't recall him telling him he had to talk, but I don't recall him telling him he couldn't talk. So he was I think he was kind of on the fence about it, and he wasn't giving really good advice, in my opinion. And Judge Aniga admitted that Quintanar was not getting good advice from people he was talking to at CHP, and that is one reason why that she did not hold him to answer, because she didn't really feel that he was getting good advice, and he was following that advice. He wasn't actually doing anything what she felt was criminal, obviously. Marlissa Ferrer said it was also relevant that Quintanar is trying to back away from the conduct to help his friends. Well, I don't think he was backing away to help his friends. He was backing away because he was told to back away, and he knew there was a problem there, and as a law enforcement officer, he needed to back away, but then they were told to stay away from popcorn. Quintanar, she said, is trying to get the jury to believe that command told him not to talk. Marlissa Ferrer has gotten into a lot of personal attacks with Quintanar in some of these arguments. She's saying he's not a good guy, he's of a low caliber, he's a low character, and so on. She's really disparaging Quintanar. Remember, he's suing her personally. So Judge Zuniga says she had that confused look on her face, and she gets like that when she doesn't really know what she's going to do or what to do. And she was stuttering up there, and I've seen her do this from the time that she held Walter Wells. It took her a long time to get the ruling out because she was stuttering and hee-hawing around because she wanted to hold him, but she couldn't explain why. It was obvious that she had a personal reason for wanting to hold Walter Wells. There's no other reason Walter Wells is still involved in this thing. Robert Woody recanted and everything else. Zuniga says there's many things that are inappropriate that Quintanar state of mind and is relevant. His comments and joking are allowed because some of the things he said, she says they're inappropriate, but she did believe that he was just joking, but the judge is going to allow it to put it to the jury, but there's no assault rifle talk going to be allowed. She says it's too prejudicial. That was the end of the day. Attorneys are back, and the jury back, I believe, Tuesday, 9 a.m. I think everybody's back at 9 a.m. Quintanar will still be on the stand. He's still facing direct examination after a week of it. He's still got more. And this is just like a lamb being led to slaughter. There was also a confidential communication that I received from a state agency in regard to somewhat related to this case. I won't be able to reveal it as of yet, but I will be able to reveal it soon. As soon as the information comes out, there is an investigation going on by a state agency, and I'm under confidence right now. It's a complaint that I filed, and I cannot say anything more than that at this time, but there is some information that's going to be coming out soon. As soon as it is, I'll be able to reveal what's going on. I put a little teaser up a while back about it, and so I did get a communication today, but it is confidential at this point. So that's where we're at. I wish I could tell you more. I badly want to tell you more about this, but I can't as of yet. So it's not directly related to this case, but it is a side issue in this case. Which are plenty of in this case. Don't forget my sponsors, Merced Tile Supply, Doug Maynor, attorney at law. Merced Tile Supply, they got a lot of good stuff over there, and I'm not kidding. I've been over that shop a couple times. They really have some nice stuff, and you got some new stuff in. You really need to go take a look at it if you're going to do some refurbishing in your home. And Doug Maynor, attorney at law, former district attorney, worked for the district attorney's office for quite a few years. So we'll PayPal button at the bottom of each report. Let me know if there's any problems. WordPress has changed their site again. It's driving me crazy. They have changed the editor that I use to put up the post. It's totally different. It's slow. It doesn't give me the same options that I had before. It doubles my work. Putting pictures in is a lot more difficult. Things like that. Putting up the PayPal buttons. Anything of this stuff doesn't work, please let me know so I can pitch a bitch, because I'm not happy with WordPress right now, and I just paid a lot of money to renew my website. So, but that's about it. The donations have been steady. I appreciate it. It really is supportive, and it's paying to keep this thing going. And I appreciate the people that are doing that. So that's, again, there wasn't that many in court today. There was a few. We need more people to come in there and see what's going on. You really need to come in and see for yourself. That person yesterday was in there and was a little amazed at what she saw. And you need to really see what's going on for yourself. It's really something else. So that's all I got. Remember what I say, don't take my word for it. Come to court and find out for yourself. You really need to see this. Good night, everybody.